All right, guys, thanks so much for joining another episode of the CX Chronicles Podcast. I'm your host, Adrian Chizana. Super excited today, guys. We have Michael Israel, head of Field Service Evangelism at Zuper, joining us, guys. And Mike's here to share his story with us today about becoming a customer-focused business leader, but also share some of the awesome things that him and the team over at Zuper are working on. So, Michael, why don't you start off today's episode, man? Say hello to the CX Nation for us.
Hello, CX Nation. It's my pleasure to be here and have the opportunity to address all of you. Thank you very much.
100%. So, guys, Mike's going to tell his own story, but this is an individual who has had a lot of experience at many different companies in many different industries. Michael, why don't you set the stage, man? Give us a sense for sort of how you got into the world of field service, how you got into the world of helping to build and lead companies. Set the stage for us, man. Give us a sense for sort of how you got into this whole world.
Well, I got into the whole world simply because I was looking for a job, like most people when they get started in a long career. But I was 19 years old, going to school at the University of Colorado, and I landed a job at IBM in what was then known as the Field Engineering Division. And I started out as a night dispatcher for field service engineers and a parts room clerk. And so I spent 12 years with IBM. I progressed from there. I went to a regional headquarters office in Seattle, Washington, where I was responsible for managing the financial aspects of field service operations and manpower planning for the Pacific Northwest region, which spanned at that time all the way from Denver up through Montana over to Seattle and back down to San Francisco. And then I went in, still at IBM, I was a manager of a parts distribution center, also in Seattle. And I stayed with IBM about 12 years, and then I moved on to another company back in Denver called Autotrol Technology. It was a CAD/CAM organization, pretty high flyer at the time that I was there, actually. And I managed the field service operations, all the technicians, both domestically and internationally, and also the technical support center, the dispatch operations, the parts room, the repair operations, etc. And then I was recruited by a software company, actually the very first software company that had a commercially available field service package. And it was a company called the Data Group, and their software was known as Field Watch. And I stayed with them for about 6 years, and then I moved on and worked for some of the very, very large companies in the CRM space and field service space. I worked for Oracle and SAP and IFS. And today I am with a company called Zuper. Zuper is also a creator of field service software applications. And in the interim, I've spent probably 8 to 10 years as a field service analyst for some of the major analyst firms as well. So my entire background, which, as you can tell probably from the color of my hair, is all it's lengthy, and not my hair is not so lengthy, but my career is lengthy in field service. That's basically all I've done my entire life.
That's awesome. I mean, so Michael, first of all, thank you for sharing that. And second of all,
Sure.
I was excited to have you on today, man, because number one, Zuper's a super cool business, and we're going to get into that in a second. But like for our listeners, anybody that is working with customers that are on the ground, right? And you literally have a field service component of your business where you need to go to the customer, to the customer's business, to the customer's space. Field service is super interesting for us CXers because many of our folks, Michael, they might be thinking about CX and CS in a completely digital fashion, right? Like they need to do their Zoom calls, and then they need to do their Salesforce tickets, and then they got to manage their Zendesk tickets, right? And things like that. But when you break field service down to some of its basic essence, like think about it, you have folks that you've been working with and teams that you've been building, Michael, that are going to the customer space. They're hearing recommendations from clients. They're doing problem solving, oftentimes probably on the fly while they're in the field working with the customer. They're thinking about how to optimize the workload. They're thinking about how to optimize your product back to home base, for lack of a better term. And then they're almost like information managers, right? For all these different field service reps that are boots on the ground and they're face to face with customers, like they are literally one of the most important parts of building out an incredible customer experience or beginning or setting the tone for what excellent customer success is going to look like. So I'm pumped to kind of hear from someone like you who's been at all these different companies and sort of built this out in many different industries. It's it's just a whole other way of thinking about CX and CS management.
Yeah, and let me start out by defining what field service is. I think it's very interesting. A lot of times when people ask me what I do, and I'll tell them that I work for a software company, and they'll say, well, what kind of software is it? And I'll say it's field service management software. And oftentimes the first question out of their mouth is, what's field service? So field service is something that people don't really think about often, but it really is ubiquitous. It's all around you. Odds are, if you see a van driving down the street, there's probably a field service person in that van going somewhere to install something, to fix something, to do routine maintenance, to do some kind of inspection, et cetera, that kind of thing. So field service spans the gamut across multitude of industries, all the way from the landscaping people that come and mow your lawn and trim your bushes, up through people that take care of point of sale systems in convenience stores and grocery stores and retail outlets, to plumbers and heating, ventilating, and air conditioning technicians that come to your house and install your water heater and your air conditioner and fix them when they break and maintain them on a periodic basis, all the way up to those folks that are highly skilled, highly trained, and they install, for example, robotic arms in surgery centers. So field service spans a wide variety of industries and a wide variety of capabilities, technical capabilities, and sophistication. And as I said earlier, field service really surrounds us. It's basically everywhere. Everybody that comes to your house to take care of something is a field service person. Everybody that goes to a manufacturing plant to take care of computer-controlled lathe machines is a field service person. And everything in between and beyond is field service. So
yeah, it's a huge piece of our economy, Michael, is what you're. I mean, like, number one, it's a huge part of our economy, but like, regardless of what your products or your services are, most businesses still require some bit of, operative field service component just to be able to either deliver or, I'm thinking what your last comment there is making me think about, it doesn't matter how much stuff you can buy for your house. Think about all the big ticket items that you have in your house. How often do you need someone to actually, from time to time, hopefully not that often, but come help fix the washer dryer, come help fix the fridge, come help fix the dishwasher. Like service exactly. Is a piece of, it's an extension of some of the product-based services or some of the products that the common consumers very, very used to, using, leveraging, and buying.
Yeah, field services is actually an extension of customer support. So, if you have a problem in your house with your heating, ventilating, and air conditioning system, for example, you'll call up somebody an HVAC company, perhaps the company that installed it for you, and you'll report an issue that you're having, and they may ask you to check a few things yourself to see if you can resolve it yourself, right?
Yep.
Or they may ask you a few questions so they can gather some additional information so they can help you resolve it. And if they can't help you resolve it over the phone, then the next logical step is they're going to dispatch a technician to your house to take care of it. So the customer support people that answer the phone are the first step in providing customer service to a customer. The next step, when it's needed, and it's not always needed, but when it is needed, the next step is field service. And a field service technician, or a field service engineer, as they're commonly called in some of the more sophisticated industries, is dispatched to the customer site to assess the problem, diagnose the problem, do triage work, and ultimately repair the problem and put the equipment back into operation for the customer. Whether that's you, a homeowner, or a hospital administrator in a hospital that's managing all of the equipment in the operating rooms, for example.
Yep. Michael, I'd love to jump into the first 6 pillars of team, man. So now that we've kind of set the stage around field service and the connectivity and the bridge building that field service techs and field service customers are in need of on a regular basis, let's talk about Zuper, man. You guys have a super cool business. You have a super cool team that you're building out. I'd love for you to kind of just walk us through what the team looks like as the business was built and as it's been growing. how did you guys start to kind of lay the picture, the players out on the pitch? What are some of the different teams, departments, and roles that you guys started to focus on while you were building the bonfire with Zuper and starting to grow the initial customer base?
Sure. Well, let me give you a little background first. Zuper is a fairly young company. We were founded about 2015. And our founder came out of Microsoft. He spent many, many years with Microsoft, and also prior to that, Tata Consulting Services out of India. And he had a pretty lousy experience with a consumer product that he had purchased. I think it was a refrigerator that he explains. And it had a problem right from the beginning. And it ultimately took him 8 visits from field service technicians to get the refrigerator to work properly.
Wow.
Yeah, and I mean, we've all had somewhat experiences.
Absolutely.
Like that,
Yep.
I'm not sure we've all had 8 visits for one issue.
Eight is a high count.
You're
close to
yeah.
double digits at that point.
So anyway, he thought he had a good technical background, and he thought, there's got to be a better way for companies to manage their service operations. So he decided he was going to found Zuper, and he did. He founded Zuper back in 2015. He got some great funding to begin with, and since then we've grown to well over 100 people in the organization. We are divided into, of course, the typical operations: sales, marketing, growth marketing. We have an engineering department. We have a professional services organization. We have a partner organization. And I am part of the executive leadership team. My title is head of Field Service Evangelism, as you mentioned at the outset. And basically, what my role is to help out wherever help is needed in the company. Given the background that I have, I help out in sales, I help out in marketing, I consult on new features and functions that are going to be added to the software itself. And currently, I'm helping out with onboarding new customers as well. We're blessed with rapid growth. We had 3 times growth last year. We're anticipating three times plus growth this year. And as a result, we're bringing in a large number of customers, and we are focusing on getting those customers onboarded and implemented as quickly as possible. And I'm focused on that at the moment to help bring new customers on board as quickly as possible. So we have all the typical organizations, as any company would. I think that I am particularly proud of our engineering organization. And the reason I say that is because I've worked for a number of software companies, as I alluded to earlier. I have never worked for a software company that can turn around and create new features and functions at the customer's request as fast as Zuper is able to do. I think it's quite remarkable. And as I said, I'm very proud of the engineering organization in Zuper.
Michael, I think you just made a bunch of our listeners really, really, really jealous of that type of, because that is one of the hardest parts of being a CX or a CS leader, right? Is like you build these mechanisms or these insets for being able to get customer feedback. What can we do more of? What do you want us to do less of? How do we get better? How do we get tighter, stronger, faster? Whatever the hell it is that you're trying to go after. And then I would argue almost 80% of the damn time, especially in a product or a SaaS-based business, you could be the best CX and CS leader in the world. You could be the best CSM in the world. You could be the best salesperson in the world. You can't go build the product. You can't go build the new feature. You can't go build the new thing that might actually give the end user that type of peace of mind or that type of a calming feeling. And that's one of the hardest parts of managing that, right? Because again, some companies are really, really good at laying out their roadmaps, setting up their OKRs, building their product roadmaps in public so that at least folks that are customer facing can have some sense of what's happening, or at least they can start to build their own verbiage around when it's going to come or when we're going to build it, or here's how it's going to be, that type of thing. But like, that's awesome that you call out. And then the other thing I just want to call out real quick, you mentioned the quick growth, right? 2015, and you guys have already, served more than 3 million work orders with the tools, which is a ton, right? And once you get over 1 million, anything, that's a lot. But you also mentioned some of the partners and some of the venture partners, and I know Fuse, Sequoia, Prime Venture, HubSpot. Mm-hmm. This is one that I want to call out though. I think you guys are definitely the first guest that we've had on CX Chronicles powered by seeing some type of a form of investment from HubSpot, and I think that's super interesting because there's so many SMBs out there where they might have the best service or they might have the great product. They don't think about and invest in what you're an expert in, which is that end of mile delivery, or that last piece of getting it over the damn hump, for lack of a better term, of like, cool, you just sold the best refrigerator in the world. Who's coming out and fixing it every 2, 3, 4 years? What's that schedule look like? And then your part about field service being an extension of support, that's interesting, man, because like a lot of companies, they're really great at selling, or they're really good at figuring out the financial mechanics of why they're the best, or why they're gonna dominate the competition. Most companies, even those companies, they typically don't think about what happens after the sale, right? Like, how are you going to think about retention and support and like longevity? Where let's use our refrigerator example here. No one ever has to have 8 visits before something gets visited or gets completed or fixed, right? So I think that's super, super cool. I just wanted to call that out, and I think it's something for our listeners to be thinking about.
Yeah, and a couple of comments I want to make is, when I first started in field service a long time ago, and for many, many years, companies thought that their primary goal was to sell product. And of course, selling product is still a primary goal for most customers.
Yep.
But providing service was kind of an afterthought. It was kind of like, okay, I sold the product, great. Oh, by the way, now I have to take care of it. Now I have to service it. But what's changed in the last couple decades, or a little bit longer than a couple decades, is that companies have begun to realize that service is not just a necessary evil. It's actually a significant contributor to revenue, and oftentimes an even more significant contributor to profitability.
Yep.
As I mentioned early on in the podcast here, I spent several years as an analyst at some of the major firms, and the research that we did showed consistently that for most companies in most industries, field service specifically contributed 25 to 40% of overall revenue, oftentimes more, and oftentimes contributed 60% or more of corporate profit.
Wow.
So field service is no longer or customer service in general is no longer a necessary evil. It's an absolutely essential part of the profitability of the organization, and a significant contributor to both the top and the bottom line.
Yep.
So
no, that makes sense.
Companies' view of service has changed over the years, and thankfully it has. We work with a consultant, a fellow by the name of David Noor a lot. He owns a company called the Noor Group. And one of his favorite sayings is, and I love this saying, sales promises what the product can do. Service delivers on the promise. So customer service and field service have become an increasingly important part of most organizations' operations. And it's the service organizations that cement customer loyalty, that cement continued customer stickiness, that cement continued customer spend.
Yep.
So anyone who underestimates the importance of service and field service, I'm sorry, is missing the boat and missing something very, very important.
No, you're 100% correct. And like, I think about some of the work that we do with our clients at CX Chronicles, Michael, you just nailed it. A big part of it is like, these customers have killed it with being able to think about how to sell, how to get a deal across the line, how to make somebody start using a thing. And again, a big part of what we're doing is with customer success optimization. It's about what you just said. It's like, no. Once it's sold, now the work begins, right? Now the expectations need filled. Now all the hard stuff is about to begin, right? And I think it's funny for many of our listeners who are founders and our executives at growth focused companies, never forget that, right? Because the reality is we live in a world, we live in a culture where it's easy to celebrate ringing the bell. It's easy to celebrate closing the deal and making the next deal squeal. That's like, and let's call it what it is. It's fun. It's fun. It's a fun part of business. Everybody enjoys that. But the reality is, just like most things in life, it's like then the hard work starts, and then your ability to put the time in starts. And then frankly, typically results over time are usually going to be most positive when you have a lot of consistent positive work or effort or coaching or construction done. And then over time, you start to reap some of the original benefits that were sold, right? And I think it's really, really important to think about that. And the other piece too is just like, again, this is why you're seeing some of the best companies on planet Earth. They are thinking about like an end-to-end journey so that they don't miss the boat. And it's not just, okay, cool, conversion happens, now everything's done. Rather, some of the best customer journey maps in the world, the bulk of the meat and the potatoes is after the point of conversion. It's conversion, it's onboarding, it's account management, customer success. Then you get to loyalty if you do those things well. And it's funny because I think a lot of people, they struggle with this, and it's important to take time to sort of map out what that looks like with your team and with your customers, and really kind of make sure that that support and that customer success after the point of sale is constantly a point of focus. Michael, I'd love to dive into the second CX pillar of tools. You started to kind of give us a high level sort of what y'all are doing and sort of how you're helping different companies and certain clients. But talk about the Zuper tool, man. Give us a sense for sort of what does this tool do? How are your customers using it? And then when you mentioned calling out that DevOps or that tech team over at Zuper, what are some of the things that they're doing that are building this tool to be such an important resource for your customers?
Sure. So at a high level, the Zuper application helps companies that do have field service technicians and field service engineers. It helps them manage the field service operations. So it helps schedule the technicians to the appropriate jobs based upon their skill set, based upon their geographic location to the customer, based upon the priority of the need of the customer. If they have an urgent need, their equipment is down, for example, that's a very high priority. If it's a kind of a routine call and can wait till tomorrow, then our ability to schedule technicians based upon taking into account the customer priority, the location of the customer versus the location of the technician, the skills of the technician. So we're able to develop optimal routes to send the technicians in a logical sequence that is cost effective and time effective, so they're not running back and forth from one end of the city to another. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is we keep track of all the costs in delivering service. What's the cost of the labor? What's the cost of the travel? What's the cost of the parts and the materials that are used in delivering service to a customer? We're able to keep track of all the revenue. How much are we billing the customer for example, a time and material service? And how much are we billing the customer if they sign up for maintenance contracts? And if they do have a maintenance contract, what's the cost of delivering all the services under that contract compared to the revenue that we generate through the contract? We gather information about customer satisfaction when they're done with a service call from a technician. Are they happy, sad, neutral, whatever? So we gather some information about whether the customer was happy with what they got from the service delivery. And we're able to keep track of all the customers, all the equipment that is installed at the customers, all of the parts that are needed. Where are the parts, or which van are they in? Which warehouse are they in? What's the value of the parts? What parts need to be returned from the field so that they can be reused again, repaired and reused again. So that's just a very high level overview of what Zuper keeps track of. In essence, it keeps track of everything having to do with providing service in the field to a customer.
I love it. I mean, there's a couple of things. It's helping to grow your business. You're clearly helping your customers improving their operational efficiency. You mentioned the customer satisfaction part, so you're helping to enhance customer experience. I would argue real time, which most companies are not good at, or even if they do have a field service solution, it's still hard, man. There's very few executive leadership teams that actually leverage the real time component of what a field service tool can actually do for you in terms of signals, right? So especially like leading signals to potential disruption or issues or breakdowns or whatever. And the last thing, employee productivity, right? Because companies that are building a large field service tech component, if you don't have, I would argue, if you don't have you minimally need visibility, and if you don't have control on the levers of how you can kind of steer left or steer right or go up or go down, it's going to be hard to keep a really, really happy customer base with some of the challenges that go into running a field tech type of a team, frankly, right?
Yeah, well, I think you're touching on something very important, that is the data that's gathered as well.
Yes,
so we're gathering an enormous amount of data about costs, about revenue, about time to service equipment, time to repair equipment, how long it takes us to respond to get on the customer site. There is just an enormous amount of data then that executive management can use to predict things like what is the failure rate for a certain type of equipment versus other types of equipment. And if the failure rate seems extraordinarily high, then perhaps we need to work with manufacturing to get some kind of an engineering change, created a safety change. The next version needs to be constructed differently to allow for easier service. And that's just one simple example of the kinds of analytics that can be done using the data that is gathered in the field when service technicians are delivering service and recording everything that they do.
Yep, 100%. And then one other piece too is some of the integration possibilities or some of the integration capabilities, right? So like, I mean, just from a quick list, like having a tool like Zuper that can also connect with Zoho, Zendesk, HubSpot, Slack, Concur, Stripe, SurveyMonkey, Salesforce, like that's a game changer. I told Michael a story last week when we were getting ready for today's show around one of the companies that I was a part of helping to build. We were rolling out Salesforce Field Lightning, right? Their version of like a field service type of component. And it was hard, so we ended up getting it to work, but like it was difficult, number one, to build it from scratch. Second of all, there was things that we could not do that our field techs were literally asking for on an employee experience side. Our field techs literally knew the top 3 things, like, dude, if you can make these 3 things better, I can actually use this app really, really well when I'm out banging out 27 stops in a day. And that's the other thing a lot of non-field service people don't realize, Michael's like, most of these guys and gals that are doing these jobs, this is super hard. You're getting up in the morning. Oftentimes you're banging out multiple locations across multiple customers, across multiple rooftops. Anything you could do with the tools to make it easier for them is really, really helpful, right? So I love that you guys have already built some of those integrations. And the last thing I was going to say is this, is just, there's a lot of growth focused companies, Michael. They go to work trying to build something like this from scratch, not realizing that there's already different tools like Zuper out there that have already perfected some of this. And they've already worked with all these different work orders and all these different customers, and they already kind of understand how they can get you up and running, right?
Yeah, a couple points that I want to make to things that you just said. One is you're absolutely right. We have a number of integrations with other SaaS tools. We have over 60 out-of-the-box integrations. You've mentioned some of the premier ones. One that I would like to add to that is QuickBooks. So integration with QuickBooks, integration with NetSuite, for example, financial systems. And the other thing that's important is to understand that Zuper is a solution that can be implemented rapidly. Our typical implementation time for onboarding time for new customers is less than 3 months or less.
Okay.
And compared to other applications, we have a much, much faster implementation time. So I think that's very important for customers as well.
100%, man. 100%. Mike, I'd like to dive into the third CX pillar of process. And actually, there might be, I'll give you a leading question here, but you spent earlier in the show, you're spending a lot of time on onboarding. So number one, high level question is just, I'd love for you to kind of talk about how you guys have all built some of the process or the living playbooks or some of the operating procedures as you built Zuper. But if you want to use onboarding as an example, I'd love to kind of hear that. But like, I'd love to kind of just understand sort of how you guys have been sort of maturing or scaling the processes. As you said, you over 100 people now working at Zuper. You guys have all sorts of different awesome, huge customers, globally recognized customers. Spend a few minutes kind of talking about process, Mike.
Sure. Well, the process is important, of course, but results are equally, if not more important. So we are staffing up our onboarding organization significantly because we're bringing on a large number of new customers. So we're staffing accordingly to be able to handle that and to be able to continue to bring new customers on board in a relatively short period of time. As I said, 3 months or less, typically, oftentimes faster than that. So we have some specific processes that we follow. Once a sale is made, well, the onboarding team gets on board or gets on a call with a new customer. We document all of their needs in very much detail. We provide those documents to our engineering team. We fill out some specific forms that describe the exact capabilities that the customer is expecting, provide those to the engineering team. We gather examples of things from the customer, like examples of quotes, work orders, invoices, job reports, etc. We provide all of those to our engineering team. And then we have consistent follow-up with our new customers as well. We also have meetings internally several times a week to review all of the outstanding onboarding activities, and we take action based upon things that are getting close to being due, or unfortunately, occasionally things that are overdue, and we prioritize those and address those as quickly as possible. But I think the most important thing is to constantly keep in mind that the customer's needs come first. And if we need to tweak the process, so to speak, in order to meet a customer's needs as rapidly as possible, we're able to do that.
I love it. I mean, that's super, super helpful. And I think the other thing too is I asked that specific question about onboarding, Michael, just because this is an area that so many companies that are, and you said this earlier, but that are privileged to bring on swaths of customers each month. Because let's call it what it is. A lot of most companies out there, if you can get to the point where you have a whole army of brand new customers coming on board every month. Number one, that's fantastic for revenue purposes and sales and growth purposes. But number two, that's my comment earlier about like where the work begins. You almost have to have a function that's maniacal about what onboarding looks like. You just said implementation goal of 3 months. Within 3 months, you're going to be fully up and running. Michael, there's companies out there that are doing 10, 25, 50 million a year who still are missing the fact that the bulk of their churn comes back when you look at their customer journey map. It comes from this point that we're talking about, where somebody's not taking the time to, number one, not just handhold, because I know that that's the common term you hear, but like I view it more as like direct, lead, and guide, right? Like onboarding, if done extremely well, you're revisiting what expectations have been set in sales. You're then recorrecting, repurposing, releveraging, or just simply re-nudging to the right type of place, because let's call it what it is. That happens in every business. But then more importantly, onboarding becomes like the way that you're going to show people where that time to value will come, what type of usability is required to achieve that time to value. And then most importantly, and again, I've had so many companies miss this, Michael, but like, this is where relationships are starting too, frankly. Like even if you have an onboarding function where I'm here to guide you for this week, Michael, but in that week, I'm going to show you all the people that are going to navigate your experience, right? But like companies constantly miss this. And then I think what a lot of the work that we do at CXC, when we start to do churn analysis or churn deep dives, it happens here, man. This is the area that you need to put like a big flag in the company's journey map and make sure that everybody understands sort of what picture perfect looks like, what versus where breakdowns form. And I just think I love hearing you kind of talk through how you guys have sort of managed the onboarding piece. And I'm sure that's part of what's helping to fuel some of this growth that you're referring to.
Yeah, I think so. If you fail or stumble in the onboarding process, it takes a long time to recover. Then you're going to go into continued customer support with a negative attitude to start with, right? So it's incumbent upon companies to do the best that they can during the onboarding process to make sure that every new customer is onboarded as successfully and as quickly as possible.
Absolutely, 100%. Michael, I'd love to dive into the fourth and final CX pillar of feedback. So, I mean, this is going to be interesting because obviously field service feedback is, I just think, man, I think it's gold. I feel like every company that I've ever been a part of with a field service team, I salivate at the opportunity for getting that real-time feedback, or right, just the ability to start pulling straight from the horse's mouth type of feedback where it's not normalized or vetted, or let's call it what it is. A lot of companies that rely on their customer success team, they're getting essentially a secondary version of what the customer just heard instead of leveraging direct, like primary source feedback. And I'd love to hear you kind of talk about, number one, how the Zuper team is really kind of leveraging and acting upon its customer feedback. And then I'd love for you to also talk about how you guys are kind of acting upon and leveraging your employee feedback as you grow the business.
Yeah, I alluded to it earlier when I said that this is the one company that I work for where I've been so pleased with the company's ability to add new features and functions on a very, very rapid basis. So our executive team, especially on the engineering side, I got to give a lot of credit to our chief technology officer and the team that works for him. When a customer needs something new, specific, they dive in and find out the details, and they get the new feature and function added to the product as quickly as possible. And I've seen it happen over and over again. So I think we have a culture of understanding and listening to what the customer's needs are, and then trying to get those leads incorporated into the product if they're not already there as quickly as possible. So it comes down to culture. We are customer obsessed, and that spans all aspects of the company. And it's especially apparent on the engineering side of things. So that's part of it. Employee success, we have, of course, regular team meetings with employees. We have weekly training sessions where all of the employees on the sales and marketing side are educated every week on new features and functions that have come out in the product. They are re-educated on things that have been in the product for a long time that perhaps they're not familiar with because the topic doesn't come up very often. So we're constantly educating and re-educating the employees as well. And there's a consistent process for feedback to the employees on how they're doing. And the feedback is bi-directional. All of the managers in the company are somewhat graded on what their employees think of them. So we are very conscious of making sure that our employees are well informed, not only about the solution that we offer, but about how they're doing. And we give them every opportunity as well to provide feedback to us on the management team as to how they think we are doing as well.
I love that. I mean, number one, it's just the power of feedback. If managed and if curtailed, it can be so powerful, right? You can literally it can set your goals. It can set your general vision. It can set your general direction as a company, as a product, as a service, but then also companies that are able to actually kind of turn back around and say to every one of the customers, hey, look, you guys told us X, Y, and Z. This is what we built. This is what we delivered. This is what we served to you based on that. Those are some of the companies that they get the true power of what CX and customer success can really do for your business. More importantly, for some of our executives listening out there, they can absolutely dictate whether or not you're going to hit your revenue goals or some of your other financial performance goals. And then lastly, right, let's just call it what it is. It's more fun to work at those companies, right? Companies that when you show up every single solitary day and you know that you're going to be able to work with a bunch of happy customers, work with a bunch of happy teammates, you're going to know that people are going to listen. OKRs and goals are literally going to be set based on what sort of the customers and employees are saying. That's a fun place to show up at work. And that's probably a company that has limited issues with churn on both the employee and the customer side. So yeah. I love it. So Michael, this has been absolutely fantastic. Before we wrap up today's show, where can people find out more about the awesome stuff that you guys are working on at Zuper? And then where can people get in touch with you, man, if they have some questions about field service or they want to pick your brain or they want to learn more about Zuper?
Sure. Well, they can go first of all to our website, which is simply Zuper, ZUPER.co. And let me emphasize that it's .co, not .com. So Zuper.co. And I'll give everyone my email address. It's quite simply, it's Michael, Michael, .Israel, ISRAEL @Zuper, again, .co. Michael.Israel @Zuper.co. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that people would like to send me, but they can also find a lot of information on our website. There's a lot of detail about the product. There are several podcasts that they can review as well. And they can download some additional information, see some customer success stories. So there's a lot of information they can gather there.
I love it. Well, look, Michael, it's been our absolute pleasure having you on the show. I'll look forward to keeping in touch with you moving forward in the future, man. And best of luck to you and the team and the customer base over at Zuper. It's been our pleasure having you on the CX Chronicles podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be on here. Thank you so much for having me and allowing me to represent Zuper. Thank you.